Hey guys, the other day we watched Atomic Blonde, now we're doing the review on it. So Aidan, what was the plot for Atomic Blonde?
Atomic Blonde is based on some comic book, because everything is nowadays a graphic novel.
Graphic novel by Uni Press.
Sure.
And, I don't know how to pronounce it, I've never read the shit.
It is about a spy lady named Atomic Blonde. She never goes by that in the movie, but I don't remember her name. Charlize Theron. And she goes to Berlin during the Cold War, and she was recounting the story of how she looked for a double agent named Satchel while trying to get a list of people that doesn't matter to stop the Cold War. And spoilers, of course, as we always do. The list doesn't matter. The Cold War ends entirely independently of everything that happens in this movie. And then, because this movie is garbage, there's 17 twists that are laid out all at the end of the movie that make a very straightforward and stupid movie into a movie that makes no sense and is stupid. So Connor, give us a little opinions on this piece of garbage.
Give us a little opinions. Well, I have a little opinions. Basically, this movie was kind of a clusterfuck in the way that, like a lot of movies nowadays, it doesn't feel very original. I mean, the concept's kind of cool. At the fall of the Berlin Wall, this kind of like espionage, spy stuff, like a female James Bond crap, happens in the background. But the movie was really fucking predictable for the stuff that made any sense. And I'll explain. So spoilers for sure. If you don't want to be spoiled from here on out, I'm just not going to hold anything back. First off, 5 minutes into the movie, I called out. There was the French girl from The Mummy showed up, and I was like, they're going to have a lesbian sex scene. Lesbian sex scene happens. You know, James McAvoy was going to be fucking, a double agent, or not really on her side at the end, which basically they framed him to be a double agent. Completely happens, because they made it blatantly obvious the entire movie. Basically, we guessed every major plot point till the end, where they threw out this thing where the Russians thought she was Satchel, but really she made up Satchel, and she was truly an American, and the Americans were tricking the British for some reason. I mean, it made no sense. Maybe if I watched the movie again with this in mind, it'd make more sense, but I mean, this movie was so straightforward, I highly doubt that's the case. So, it was a straightforward movie. There was a lot of the fight scenes, and I think the cinematography felt a lot like John Wick. And I don't know much about the comic, but I would assume what they were trying to do with the LED lights in the background was try to simulate the comic, which I'm assuming had a really blue tint to it. I'm just pulling shit out of my ass, but a lot of, it's so neon. I'm assuming there was big neon lights everywhere in the comic, and I'm assuming it also probably had a blue coloration. I'm sure it had really cool coloring. Actually, I think I've seen like a cover for it or something, but it sounds, the cinematography was cool at first, and then it was like, it's like going to McDonald's, something tastes good once, but once you pay $1 for a cheeseburger, by the 5th time, you're not going to like that fucking cheeseburger anymore, you know what I'm saying? So by the 20th scene of everything having LED lights, and like, was that actually a thing in Germany at the time, where any hotel room you rented out would have LED lights? And she's trying to keep under the radar, and yet she's getting these huge penthouse fucking suites with all these LED lights and this fancy shit, and every bar she goes to happens to be lit by blue LED lights. It was just annoying, and since the light source was always blatantly showed, it was like, oh, looky there, they got some more of the fucking neon lights, and it just got really obnoxious. Obviously, there was some inspiration from James Bond there. I read a lot of articles like, this is the female James Bond, but what I felt more like is this was blatantly the female John Wick, because the fight choreography, I'm assuming the same company that made John Wick's fight choreography, which is owned by the guys who directed John Wick, had something to do with it, or they were blatantly ripped off, because it was like the exact fight moves. It was like Black Widow from fucking Iron Man 2 mixed with fucking John Wick fight sequences. So that was kind of unoriginal. The 80s pop music, come on, guys. Like,
totally unoriginal thing.
It just becomes, it's such a cliche in Hollywood now. Guardians of the Galaxy 1, when they saw that, I was like, that is a truly creative way to integrate music into a movie, and it was great. And then I'm seeing it in Baby Driver. Now I'm seeing it in Atomic Blonde. I'm sure there's 10 examples I'm missing right now as well, but she blatantly was using the Walkman all the time, listening to it. It was like the Russian covers, so that was like its twist on it, but it was blatant. She'd go in a car, turn on the radio, she'd have her Walkman hooked up while she was going places. It's like, you know, especially like in the comic book movie genre, which obviously this isn't a superhero movie, this is quite different. But I mean, you're still, obviously, you bought this, the company who made this movie bought this property, or bought the rights to make this property for the sole reason that it was a comic book. B, it had a woman. C, they had the opportunity to make a lesbian sex scene. Whether or not that was in the comic, I have no idea. And I don't give a fuck about the context, because honestly, I thought this movie was just boring, bland. It was an amalgam of many things, but didn't do anything that right. The twists at the end were just stupid. Like, there's cool twists in movies that are like, that just blew my mind. At the end, they said that, you know, John Goodman was basically like an operative with her, and that she was really CIA, and I was like, explain to me why wasn't she just British the whole fucking time? Like, honestly, the last two twists, like her being Satchel and her being American, literally everything about the movie, like, it went from like an okay movie to like, the movie at the end just pissed me off so much. It was just an obnoxious movie, and for whatever reason, I just completely hated it. Nothing was original in it, you know, everything was stupid. The only reason they had a lesbian sex scene was just to fucking get people talking about it, because she had no emotional connection to that to the other girl, and, you know, they were just lesbians to be lesbians. And in the movie, they're like, so why did you become a lesbian with this girl? And she's like, I don't even know myself. I thought I could get information, but I couldn't. And then she dies, and it's supposed to make her sad, but it turns out she's American. So was it just so that she could trick the British people into thinking she was a lesbian trying to get information? Was she actually trying to get information? Because she knew she was Satchel the whole time. So is she just a lesbian looking for some lesbian pussy? Did she have to do with the death of her? You know, the whole movie unravels and makes no fucking sense when you actually look at the stupid fucking twist. Like, if they could have just kept their boner in and skipped the fucking twist, said James McAvoy was fucking Satchel, and, you know, if they actually did something with their fucking MacGuffin that was the most important part of the whole movie, the fucking list, you know, then you might have had a decent movie, a decent John Wick ripoff. But at the end of the day, we had a really shitty John Wick ripoff that really felt bloated, really thought it was smarter than it was, and really was just a shitty movie. So, Aidan, what are your thoughts on Atomic Blonde?
I have 4 contentions with Atomic Blonde: originality, characters, plot twists, and aesthetic. And I think these things are all pretty self-explanatory. 1. Originality. This movie had nothing original to it. The movie, outside of being a comic adaptation, which makes it unoriginal to start with, this movie was essentially a combination of a bunch of Hollywood cliches. It wanted to be John Wick really bad. It had the same kind of generic fight moves that every Hollywood movie has.
I mean, John Wick even had a really blue tone to it.
Yep.
It really felt like a
the
John
80s
Wick
music, stylistically, this movie
Not just the 80s music, because 80s music was always common in movies since the 80s, but how they presented it was just a clone of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Just a cliche.
It's a bunch of stuff stolen from other movies, and it doesn't work together in any way, let alone a good way. And it's kind of just like, in the end, you end up with something really bland because it has nothing original to show for it. My second contention, characters. Every character in this movie is stupid and dumb and sucks.
I like James McAvoy a little bit. I thought he was just a suave little asshole.
James McAvoy I liked
but then he kind of falls apart
the
with
last
a twist.
minute because you got Atomic Blonde. Atomic Blonde wants to get the list, and the list doesn't matter at all and literally has no impact on the plot, even when the list is destroyed or lost or whatever. The list has no bearing on the ending of the movie, and it was just a plot device to get everyone in the same place. And the twist at the end the twist is that she's a triple agent. She was always Satchel, and she was pretending to be British. She was an American pretending to be a Russian pretending to be British.
Here's what it was. The Russians believed that she was pretending.
Yes, the Russians believed British. She was a double agent against the British, and she was giving them fake information.
And she was a double agent being Satchel trying to sell the information to the mercenary, but it turns out she was American. So she was actually a quadruple agent, was my understanding.
Yeah. The point is, it's stupid. The French girl had no character except being gay for Atomic Blonde.
Yep.
And the biggest problem is James McAvoy. James McAvoy, up until the twists happen, seems like a pretty straightforward kind of guy. He's a double agent, and he's kind of like, well, I mean, up until the twist, you are literally you're fed this story that James McAvoy is a double agent. And he's kind of working against everyone, and he's more interesting in that regard because when the twists happen, where everything is kind of revealed, James McAvoy, for literally no reason, kills the French girl. Like, I have absolutely no idea why he did this.
Yeah, I don't even know why he showed up at her house, really.
His motivation in the movie loses all sense when it's revealed that he was a good guy all along.
Yeah.
And then,
I guess
Atomic Blonde kills him in order to frame him as Satchel, which, okay, that makes sense.
But she also kills him
because
she's butthurt about
the reason that she mainly killed him was because she was butthurt about her girlfriend, and James McAvoy reveals that the reason he killed the list, like the guy who memorized the list, and the reason he did a bunch of bad things was because he really likes living in Berlin.
I have 5 points, real quick, if you are... Just short points. First off, the Russians... After the twist, the Russians become 100% pointless. What are the point of them?
Nothing.
Second off, this is a movie... This is historical fiction based on a historical part of time. Meaning the list that would extend the Cold War for 40 years. First off, how would it extend the Cold War for 40 years? Second off, they never explained how it would extend the war for 40 years. And third off, it turned out not to be important at all. And since it's a historical event, we already know how that's going to end.
Yep.
Third off, what happened to the character, Atomic Blonde is the least fucking relatable character I've ever seen. She has no character motivations except she's a spy for Americans, which we don't know until the last minute. And fourth off, she's telling this interview. So, how much of this movie is actually true? So you sit there and you're like, okay, so is the reason it's so fucking contrived, are they trying to talk around the fact that it's so fucking contrived and makes no sense because she's telling the story herself, but it was different? Like, what reason would we have to know that she would tell the truth? Because this whole movie's framed around the interview. All eyes on me style, She's like Tupac. And she can say whatever the fuck she wants. Which means everything she says is probably complete bullshit. Which means, the movie means absolutely nothing. And the fifth point is, why the fuck is she pretending to be a British person when she's truly American? Like, what does she gain? Did she actually know? Did her or the Americans actually know that, okay, we're going to send Atomic Blonde because she's such a good spy. She's going to start dating the British dude and pretend to be a British guy. The British dude would be killed by the Russian guy who turned out to be pointless. And then she would be sent to Russia as a trap just to get, basically used as a target to get killed so that they could find the list, which has 1,000 names, which will extend the Cold War for 40 years. But it won't? And what the fuck?
But anyway.
It literally makes no sense. Why would you add the American plotline? It literally fucking makes the movie from kind of working but kind of being a shitty movie into not even making any fucking sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's just stupid. It's literally fucking stupid. It's bafflingly
yes, the movie
stupid.
is bafflingly stupid.
I can't even
the only
believe
character
I wasted $7
the only
the
only character who had a real character
Come on.
was James McAvoy, and James McAvoy's character is completely changed. Well, he's completely changed, undone, and invalidated in the last 2 minutes.
If he's even represented correctly, because
okay, well, I'm not going to go into that hypothetical because that just makes this already dumb and complex movie even worse. Anyway, so my third contention is the twists, and I've already gone into the twists a little bit, but the problem with these twists, and there's about 15 of them in the last 10 minutes, is that a good twist should change the way you view a movie the second time. Let's go over some examples. Number 1, The Sixth Sense. You look at
The Last Airbender.
That doesn't have a twist. That movie's straightforward and stupid. The Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense, on a second viewing, has elements of the story that you can recognize as being hints to what the twist is in foresight. It makes the movie a completely different movie on a second viewing, and that's what makes it such a good twist. You can look at a movie like Memento, which is Christopher Nolan's only other good film.
What about Dunkirk? Well, look, Batman Begins isn't too bad, and Inception is borderline okay.
The twist about Memento, besides the very strange method of storytelling, is that in the end, even though Gary Oldman's not a bad person, he makes himself believe Gary Oldman is a bad person. And this twist changes the way you look at the movie. These twists have, as far as I can tell, granted I haven't seen this movie a second time yet, and I probably never will, these twists have little to no setup. These twists change nothing about any part of the movie except the last 5 minutes.
It does change is everything, because now the movie makes no sense and completely is contrived, and the whole story.
Yes, I realize. Okay. Yes, I realize. The twists are fundamentally flawed and tear apart an already weak story. Fourth contention.
It's like the second plane flying in
aesthetics.
the World Trade Center.
And
everything changes. The twists is Osama bin Laden was behind it.
Thank you for interrupting me for the 5th time. Aesthetics.
I'm gonna shoot myself.
Please do. Aesthetics.
Oh, savage.
The last contention I have with this movie, the fourth contention, is the aesthetics. And it's not to say that you can't use lighting to stylize a movie, because you have something like Drive, which is highly stylized by its lighting.
John
Wick
too.
John Wick as well. The problem with the lighting in this movie is that it is constantly and consistently ugly. Every single scene in this movie, regardless of tone or content or emotional feeling, is covered in a disgusting, horrible, heavy blue filter.
And they thought it was the sexiest thing ever, too. They're like, this is slick, this is sexy, and we're not going to let it go for the entire fucking movie.
It's incredibly jarring to see a movie filmed this way, because when you're trying to make a movie stylistic, you have to remember to make the stylism attractive. And making everything dark, ugly, washed out blue is not attractive. And they kind of try to offset it in the same way that Drive did by adding light tones in the form of neon. But the neon has two problems. One, the neon is very, very tacky.
Here's the problem. The neon would have looked fine on itself. But the problem is, then you do the filter that washes it out. It makes everybody look really pale. Like fucking, what's her name again? Charlize Theron. She looks like goddamn Voldemort in this movie. Because they're like, what if we just washed all the color away except blue?
Yeah,
what if we made a filter where it was just blue? And even the blue, we made borderline blue-gray, so it just looks ugly as fuck. Like, if you made it neon, but then you made, you know, some other neon colors too, you could have made this movie look super fucking cool. And if you made this movie at least stylistically look cool, I probably could have sat through the 2 hours and then just rolled my eyes at the theory at the end. But the problem is they fucked up so hard on the cinematography that the cinematography is what really fucked this movie.
Yeah, the cinematography is very bland and forgettable.
It almost made me want to go home the entire time because it was so bad.
The problem with the neon is that the neon is both tacky and doesn't do enough to offset the blue.
Sure.
The thing about Drive, which is an example I've already brought up.
I think Drive's one of the best
examples. Drive has heavy blue contrast across the entire movie, but in almost every scene that contrast is offset with warm oranges. In this movie, they have exclusively neon pink, which is an ugly color, and a tacky color, and they combine it with a really, really washed out blue that doesn't make it seem stylized so much as it makes it seem fucking ugly.
I'm really drunk. But anyways, I was gonna say the other thing Drive does is it actually, the cinematographer wasn't lazy on Drive. What he did was he used lighting, and I'm sure there's obviously color correction on 100% of movies. That said, Drive used practical lighting mostly. This had practical lighting, but 90% of the shit they were trying to pull on this was just But 90% of this film was like, the blue light doesn't get the effect we really want. And they're like, that's okay, we'll just change all the hues so it looks blatantly blue. And they're like, no, that looks gay, dude. We need to make it look slightly more edgy. This is an edgy movie, so let's make it look gray. And they're like, wow, this is actually more washed than The Dark Knight. And they're like, well, The Dark Knight was a good movie, and it also was based on a comic book. And they're like, oh yeah, we spent $100,000 to get this crappy ass comic book property that nobody knows about, so that we can say based on the groundbreaking graphic novel. Who's heard of this fucking graphic novel, by the way? Has anybody here read Atomic Blonde? I didn't think so. You know what I'm saying? Because it's fucking stupid, and the book sucks, I'm sure, because the movie was gay.
Point is, this movie has a lot of flaws and no positives. So Connor, what'd you
Oh my god, that was savage. This movie has no positives.
It doesn't. Name 3.
I can name 1.
What?
Charlie Theron's a MILF.
Yeah, you get to see, some nipples anyway.
Yeah, are they nipples?
Yeah, there's nipples.
Okay, who's hotter? Charlie Theron or the other lesbian?
The French girl.
French girl.
I'd take the French girl over Charlize Theron.
I think Charlize Theron's like fucking late 30s, early 40s, probably.
Yeah.
The French girl's at least like probably 31. She doesn't feel like she's nearly as old.
But anyway.
You know what else is weird? The French girl looked like some fucking modern ass American hipster. We live in Minnesota. I feel like if I went to fucking South Minneapolis, dude, that's the girls that be biking around.
The early 90s style has made a huge comeback in the hipster culture. And
I'm shocked she wasn't wearing a Rick. If she was wearing a Rick and I'd say 2017. You know what I'm saying? She was just missing that Rick and Morty.
Anyway.
Rick and May.
Would you recommend this garbage movie?
Would I recommend this garbage movie? That's the big question. Well, I'd have to write a whole thesis on this crappy movie. But I could sum this up in a couple sentences. So what I'll say is, if you want to watch cheap rip-offs of John Wick, if you're like, damn, I want to wait through it 2 hours before I can see one super good fight scene. I thought the fight scene where she beat down like 20 guys was pretty cool.
The stairwell thing?
The stairwell thing was alright. You know what I liked about it? You know what I did like about this movie? Charlize Theron, she knew she couldn't fight with the big boys. So she had to cheat, and she was playing like a bitch. And you know what? If I was a highly trained female operative, I'd be fighting like a bitch too. And I'm not saying I'm not trying to be sexist here. But I'm saying, biologically speaking, I have the advantage over, the average woman my age probably weighs like 100 pounds, 125 pounds. I feel like I would instantly be able to beat the shit. Okay, I'm just fucking
This
getting
is
into.
horrible.
This is a horrible.
Just say
This
if
is
you
a horrible
recommend
way
the
to
garbage.
say this. But what I'm saying is, it was kind of cool that she was kind of cheating. The fight scenes were pretty cool, but there were only a couple of them in there. That
Fight
said,
scenes are also
everything.
pretty generic.
What I was coming around.
Saying that.
They were kind of generic, but you know, fight scenes nowadays are shot pretty cool. And I thought, if anything was good in this movie, it was the fight scenes. So if you really have nothing better to do on a Thursday or on a Friday afternoon, like we didn't have anything better to do on a Friday afternoon, then I guess go to this movie. But would I suggest paying more than $5 for this? No. And would I suggest seeing this movie if you absolutely have anything better to do? No. Would I suggest pirating this movie if you're somehow interested? I guess pirate it. But would I pay to see it? You know, would I, to the average person, would I suggest this movie? Absolutely not, because it was shitty and it made no sense. So, Aidan, what do you think about this? Did you suggest this movie?
No, under no circumstances see this movie.
I don't know why I even said yes at all.
It
because this movie
is
fucking
crap.
shit.
You can go to your local video store or your local video bay, and
Here's where else.
you can pick up John Wick and John Wick 2 for cheap or free.
How do we not own the John Wick 2 DVD yet?
I don't know. Why does it matter?
I don't know.
Please stop. So we can finish this and get on with it. For the love of
Bye.
God. Pirate or buy John Wick and John Wick 2. Watch those, because everything, this movie wants to be John Wick so bad, and it fails in every regard, and it is just a cheap imitation of something that you can pick up for $4 in Walmart that is 1,000 times better. It's honestly a garbage, boring movie. It's overly long, and there's absolutely no reason to view this. I've never read the comic, but even someone who actually likes this comic, if there are any fans of it, probably would not enjoy this movie because it is boring, generic trash.
Two more things, then I'm done. Very short things. First off, I almost 100% guarantee you the comic book's better than this.
I'm sure it is.
Just because the comic books are able to flesh things out better. But that said, I changed my mind. I don't recommend this at all. But this bug is a friendly ass dude. He doesn't even mind crawling around on
He's a
us.
friendly ass dude.
He's amazing.
also
But anyways, in like 2 months when this movie comes out on DVD, check the fight scene online where she's in the staircase. That fight scene was relatively cool. So I would suggest that. But otherwise, every other fucking thing about this movie is complete fucking garbage. So, bye. Bye.